Good evening, you guys. This lecture is on, well, first of all, this welcome to social problems class. This afternoon, I'm going to lecture on chapter 5. I'm going to do a brief lecture, not too much. I don't want to overwhelm you guys. So we'll call this chapter 5, part 1. And chapter 5 is entitled Family Problems. I really enjoy talking about family problems. This is where we get an opportunity to see some differences within families. We also get an opportunity to learn a lot as it relates to families, how families are structured, how our families are different from other people's families. Some of the traditions and things like that. We'll get an opportunity to look at some of those things. So, first of all, whenever we talk about family problems, first of all, we have to define exactly what a family is. And so, your textbook gives us actually two definitions. We'll have a definition as it relates to the United States Census Bureau. They actually define what a family is. And right now, I hope you guys make sure that your families do, in fact, take part in completing the census. Now is the time to do it. So, anyway, so we have one definition from the United States Census Bureau, and then we have one definition from a sociology perspective. So when we're talking about the U.S. Census and how they actually define family, they're going to define family as a group of two or more people, and those two or more people can be related either by blood, they can be related by marriage, or they can be related by adoption. Okay, those are going to be your three: two or more people that are related by blood, by marriage, or either by adoption. Now, when we're looking at the sociology definition of how we define family, it can be defined as a kinship system of relatives that are actually living together. Okay. So we recognize these individuals as a social unit. Okay. This could also include adopted individuals as well. All right. So those are going to be your two broad definitions as it relates to family. Now, of course, we have different types of families, right? In many countries, including United States, the only legal form of marriage is going to be monogamy. Monogamy is basically when you have a marriage between two partners, okay? Your textbook talks about a common variation of monogamy is going to be what we call serial monogamy. And serial monogamy is going to be a succession of marriages in which a person has more than one spouse over a lifetime, but is only legally married to one person at a time. So what does that mean? That means that, for example, Ms. Wharton and her husband are together for 5 years, and then we decide that we are going to go our separate ways, and so we get a divorce. And so while we're together in those 5 years, I'm married to that one person. He is only married to me, right? And so then, let's say, for example, I leave the marriage after 5 years, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to marry John. And John and I, we stay married for 2 years, right? And so then I leave John, and now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to marry another person. And we stay together for the rest of our lives. So that will be considered a great example of what we call serial monogamy. Okay, so we have different types of marriages that occur. We also have polygamy. Polygamy is considered to be a form of marriage in which one person may have two or more spouses. It's basically practiced on all continents throughout the world. Okay, so I have polygamy. That is a form of marriage in which one person has two or more spouses. That's polygamy with an M. Polygyny involves one husband having more than one wife. Okay, polygyny. A less common form is called polyandry. Polyandry is the concurrent marriage of one woman to two or more men. Okay, so polygyny involves a man who has one wife. Polyandry is considered to be a wife who has more than one husband. Okay. It should be noted that in the United States, Congress outlawed polygamy in 1892. Therefore, being married to more than one person is considered to be a crime, and it is called bigamy. Okay. So we have bigamy as well. Now, your textbook goes into details and it gives examples of individuals who engage in polygamy as well as monogamy. Okay, so they give the example about you may have heard of this show on TLC with a guy named Cody Brown. He's actually married to, I think, 4 or 5 different women. At my last count, I've watched the show occasionally. Um, but yeah, it's a great example of individuals engaging in polygamy. The families at one time, and it's called Sister Wives. That's what the show is called. At one time, all of the women lived in a home together. Of course, they have children, and all the children are living in a home together with the one's male spouse, which is Cody Brown. He has the 4 or 5 wives. Some of the wives have been included in the marriages after them. Their children have been a part of the marriages after them. The children, like I say, all lived in one home. They kind of worked together. They cooked together. They ate together. They, did all of the different things that a family would actually do. And I think they got to a point where they decided they wanted to move into separate homes. And so at the last I knew, all of the ladies were actually in a separate home, but they're all still considered to be one big family. Very interesting show. If you guys decide that you want to take a look at it, very interesting to see how this family all work together. Okay. Now, your textbook moves on and talks about, well, let me say this. We should talk about what's known as arranged marriages versus self choice marriages. There are a number of different religions that do. Arrange marriages as opposed to self-choice marriages. It should also be noted that when you do the arranged marriages, the bride and groom don't actually meet each other until a few weeks before the actual wedding. Sometimes they don't, but I've watched a few times as well. I thought it was very interesting. It's considered to be married. The show is called Married at First Sight. It is considered to be a social, what do they call it? A social experiment show. Okay. And they actually don't see their husband or their spouses until the day of the actual wedding. Very interesting. Um, so basically, parents are going to arrange marriages based upon social class. They'll also look at religion, politics, as well as occupation. So yeah, very interesting for those individuals who engage in arranged marriages. I want to take a look at the show. It's pretty interesting. Now, the show is a little bit different from what I just explained because with the arranged marriages, the families normally get together. They'll basically interview this person, talk with this person, and the other person's family gets together. They interview the person, talk to the person, look at their religion, look at their upbringing, what are their ideas about marriage, what are their ideas about parenting, what's their occupation, all of those different things. With the actual television show Married at First Sight, they actually have these sociologists and psychologists and counselors, all these different people that get together. They kind of look at issues that this person have and issues that this person have, and what are their what are their great attributes, what are some things they need to work on, and they decide we think these people will be a good fit for each other. And if you go back and look at the show, if you've ever watched the show, you'll see that some people have actually stayed together and stay married, and some people are not. Some people struggle in the beginning of the marriage, and then they tend to do well. So yeah, take a look at that if you get an opportunity. Your text moves on and talks about division of power in families. Now, it should be noted that in many societies, male dominance in the larger society is reflected in the dominance of husbands over their wives in families. They talk about also in developed Western countries. Although gender inequality persists, marriages tend to be more egalitarian. When you talk about egalitarian, that means that women and men view each other basically as equal partners, right? Equal partners who actually share decision making and assign family roles based on choices as opposed to traditional beliefs about genders. Okay. So they feel like, we have in many instances in a lot of families, we have these traditional beliefs about what a woman should do in the marriage, what a man should do in the marriage. And sometimes because we've been raised in these very traditional backgrounds, we don't step outside the box and do things different. However, when you're dealing with marriages that are seem to be more egalitarian, then both individuals are going to make decisions. Both individuals are considered to be equal partners. Both of the partners may do certain things. So it's not just that mom is going to care for the children and dad is going to work. Mom may work, dad may stay home and not work, but he may care for the children. Dad may work and care for the children. Mom may work, care for the children. She may cut the grass. She may take the garbage out. Dad may cook. It's just like whatever we decide together as a team, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get away from those traditional things that we've been taught as it relates to gender. So your text moves on and talks about what's known as social norms as it relates to childbearing. Of course, in less developed countries or societies, where social expectation for women are to have are for women to have children are strong. Women on average have about 4 to 5 children in their lifetime and begin having them at an early age, with more than half of the women actually getting married by the age of 18. That's going to be, of course, in your less developed societies. It says, of course, norms about childbirth out of wedlock. Childbirths also vary across the globe. In the United States, they talk about the idea. Your textbook actually gives a statistic and says 4 in 10 births in 2014 were going to be to unmarried women. Okay. Now, of course, you also have to you have another issue that you can have on the table, which is same-sex couples, right? Norms and policies concerning same-sex intimate relationships also are going to vary around the world. In some countries, it should be noted that homosexuality is going to be punishment either by imprisonment or it can be punishable by death. Okay, in a handful of countries and of course, here in the United States now, same-sex couples have been granted the right to legally marry. Okay. So yeah, we should. Let me also give you this statistic. It says in 2015, the United States Supreme Court ruled 5-4 vote that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to be legally married in all 50 states. So it wasn't until 2015 that we actually got the right for individuals who are same sex to actually marry. However, there are still some countries, like I said before, where same sex marriages as well as same sex marriage is going to be punishable by death or even by imprisonment. Okay. Now, let's look at some contemporary patterns and trends and variations as it relates to the United States family. Okay. Some of the significant changes in the United States family and that have occurred over the past several decades include the following. So they say today 1 in 5 adults have actually never been married. Okay. There is an increased heterosexual and same-sex cohabitation. So in fact, while we only have 1 in 5 adults who actually get married, we have a huge increase in heterosexual and same-sex cohabitation. So what does that mean? We have a lot of people who are actually living together but not necessarily getting married. And that can be for a number of different reasons as to, excuse me, as to why individuals decide they want to cohabitate instead of actually getting married. Okay. Now, of course, we have increased births to unmarried women as well, because we do have a lot of women, like we just said, are couples who are deciding that they want to just cohabitate. So they say the percentage of births to unmarried women rose to historic levels in 2013. In 10 U.S. births, it says no, 4 in 10 U.S. births in 2013 were to unmarried women. The highest rates of non-marital births is going to be among African Americans, Native Americans, as well as Hispanics. Okay. Now, when we're talking about your textbook moves on and talks about stabilized divorce and blended families. It says the refined divorce rates, the number of divorces per 1,000 married women increased dramatically from the 1960s to its peak, maybe around 1980. It says, but of course, it has declined, and basically, it's kind of stabilized since the early 1980s. Now, let's talk about, I want to go into a little bit more details um, as it relates to, let's see. What did I talk about? Oh, as it relates to divorce, right? And so we talk about divorce. It should be noted, however, that 50% of all U.S. marriages actually end in divorce. That's in general for the United States. However, among African Americans, it is 70% of African American marriages actually fail in divorce as well. Okay. Now we have a let me also say this. We have what's called increased grade divorces. And we talk about grade divorces. This is going to be divorces among people who are considered to be 50 and older. Those types of divorces have increased as well. It says married people age 50 and older are twice as likely to get divorced today as they were in 1990. Okay. There are a number of different reasons as to why you could have great divorces. There are a number of different reasons why you could have divorces altogether, whether they're great divorces or not. And based off of individuals getting a divorce, you would have what's called blended families. A lot of people may refer to them as step families, right? This is basically going to be families involving children from previous relationships. A great example of blended families. I'm saying a great example, but you guys may not even know about this show. I was going to say the Brady Bunch, but that was a long, long time ago. So I'll give you a little bit of information about the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch was a Caucasian family, a woman who had 4 girls. She married a guy who had 4 boys, right? And they all basically moved into the home. They got married and they moved into the home together. That would be a great example of what's called a blended family. Okay, great example of that. We also have, let me see, employment. Okay. Let's talk about grandparents and what they call because we're talking about the different types of families, right? And so we do have families where grandparents actually live with their grandchildren, right? Some of you guys may have actually been raised by your grandparents. Some of you guys may actually live in a home with your parents, but you also live in a home with your grandparents as well. Grandparents, as they have become more involved over the years in the lives of their grandchildren, okay? And that's going to be for a number of different reasons. Your textbook refers to it as one reason could be due to life expectancy. It could be to do partly due to single parent families, and it also could be due to female employment, right? And we talk about female employment, you know, at one time women didn't work outside of the home. Okay, not that women didn't work; they didn't work outside of the home, and so therefore you always had a caretaker for the children. Okay, when you talk about grand families is a term. Okay, grand families can be formed. You know, out of a number of different reasons. Some of the reasons your textbook talks about specifically is the idea that you may reside in the home with a grandparent so that a parent can go to work or so that a parent can go to school. Right. It might be because your parent lost their job, right? It could be because a parent has out of state employment. It could be because of divorce. It could be because of deportation. It could be because someone has an illness, right? It could be because someone has substance abuse issues. It could be because someone died. It could be because someone is deployed in the military. So there are a number of different reasons as to why we can have grand families. Okay. All right, you guys. I don't want to do too much. I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much. And so we will stop here and we will pick up on Wednesday. I hope that you've enjoyed the lecture. I hope that you can understand everything. Of course, if you have any questions regarding the lecture or anything that I've talked about today, please make sure you have your questions ready for Wednesday. And I'll be more than happy to review any concept or to go over anything that you didn't understand. I hope that everyone is being safe. I miss you guys. I really do. I hope that everyone is being safe. I hope that no one has been directly affected by the COVID-19, you or your family members. And just know that we're going to get through this, right? Continue to do the best you can with your studies. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. You guys have a great day. Great. Goodbye.